Okay, so now what we're going to do is, now that we have our CAD file imported into Rhino, before we get too much into it, we're just going to go over a few little housekeeping things, just generally. Now, to begin with, I know a lot of you, Rhino might be really, really new to you, and this whole software might look really kind of intimidating, but I can guarantee you it's not going to be bad at all. For the scope of this project, there's just going to be a few really key commands and tools that you're going to be using that'll accomplish everything you want to accomplish for this. And we're going to go through all those tools. Now, before we do any of that, I'd like to talk for a second about the biggest first thing we need to really make sure we have ironed out here, which is, now before we begin, a really important thing that we want to make sure we have straight in the model and as accurate as possible is units. So you might have remembered that when I imported this last time, I decided to keep everything in meters because that's what the original file that we pulled in from the city of Calgary AutoCAD was. But we're going to check that right now just so all of you know exactly what units you're working in. It's a good thing to confirm. So in order to check our units, what we're going to do is we're going to go to File up here. We're going to go down to Properties. We're going to go down to Units. And we can see that for sure we are in fact in meters. Now this is ideal because, again, if we're using anything from Google Earth for getting heights of buildings, that sort of thing, it's nice that we're working in the same, Google Earth is typically, I always use it in meters. So something like this, it's good if we can kind of keep a consistent set of units. So we're happy with meters, and then we can go from there. Now, as I briefly mentioned in the last video, when you start with Rhino, this is typically the 4 views that they give you. So they're going to let you use view in top, perspective view, front, and right. Now I know these don't look like much of anything right now because we're just dealing with a flat, one-dimensional CAD file. But once we start extruding stuff, we're going to start, these right and front viewports are going to become a lot more useful. So to begin with, as we navigate these 4 ports, if you want to move around in any of them, all you're going to do is you just select the port you want to deal with. So if I want to look in perspective, I just click there, and then that becomes the active port. Now, we're just going to stick with top for now. To scroll in and out, you're just going to use the scroll wheel on your mouse. That's going to let you get a little closer to, see things in greater detail. Now, to rotate around a model, what you're going to do is you're going to hold down the right cursor, and then you're going to hold it down, and that's essentially going to let you navigate around. You're going to be able to get different views of things. You can rotate just like that. Now, I know this doesn't look like too much of anything right now because this is all just flat lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example of what a finished one might look like and how it's useful to be able to navigate around in that. So here, as you can see, we've got a lot more lines and everything that have been extruded and built up. We've given some detail to the surrounding buildings and created light fixtures and everything like that. You can see that using the scroll in and out tool is quite useful here in terms of being able to gain a little better detail. So in this case, this is a good example of where you can use the rotate function. So you're going to hold down the right cursor, and as you hold it down, you're going to be able to kind of navigate around the model. You can kind of zone in on places you want to get a better view of. Now in this model, you can also see that when you have the right front views, this is essentially the kind of detail it provides. So everything you're seeing in the perspective, it's essentially just showing the right view, the front view. Now when we look in this model, we can also see that when you have something built out, this is how it appears in the front view and the right view. Now, before we get too far into the crafting of any of these things, I also want to show you the fact that when you're in the front view and the right view, you're going to notice that these two probably look different. This is got some shade behind it, whereas this is wireframe. Now, the way that you can change this if you want to is you can go to here, essentially the top left corner where it names the view. You can see there's a little drop-down menu here. And you could cycle down. It's currently on shaded, but if I put this on wireframe, there you go. It appears just like these other ones. And it can really depend on how much detail you want. Obviously, this is useful in the sense that now I can see what's going on essentially in, with all of the geometry. for the model, but you know, obviously it doesn't look very complete. So that's where, in order to get a sense of what's actually built up, I always like to keep at least one view in shaded, and I can view all of them in shaded if I want to. If I want to view my front view in shaded, as you can see there, now we get a good sense of what the actual built space is like.